A year ago, I made a video where I spent 100 hours learning the old recoil pattern for the MP5. The video did really well, and I had a full year of MP5 use after it. However, FacePunch have released their combat update, overhauling the previous recoil system and making some of the most fun parts of the game, PvP, a lot more accessible. But it also means that all the hard work from the last video is gone, and we're back facing the prospect of learning a new way to control the MP5. And I couldn't think of a better way to do exactly that than spend another 100 hours grinding it out. The old system had me learning a single pattern by repetition. However, this new combat system will have me on a long journey to discover what parts are learnable, where the new skill gaps lie, and all in all just to get confident behind an MP5 once more. From the get-go, it was just a case of getting the first sprays out the way. These will be my first real sprays. Okay, I'm still definitely trying to do the old pattern, so I think I need to get out of that habit straight away. I immediately faced the problem of continuing to use the heavily ingrained old recoil, but up close the gun felt incredibly easy to just pick up and start using. Okay, it's not as hard to pull down as you think. Okay, and what about standing? Standing's still pretty rough, I won't lie, was strafing. It really didn't take too long to clock just how big the difference was between being crouched and stood. Something that wasn't present at all before is clearly going to be a big part of the meta from here on. I'm definitely finding myself using the old pattern, and I don't think you need to pull down quite as aggressively. It was definitely a different feel all round. The difference between being stationary and strafing was shocking, and the Aimcone plus sway were noticeable straight out the gate. There's definitely a lot of RNG taking place where that bullet spray is just out of my control a lot there. As with my last video, this challenge is about full mag spray practice, but especially at range I noticed that something was now holding the MP5 back. The longer you sprayed for, the harder the battle to keep it on target became. This is bound to lead to a whole new burst meta in the wipes to come, but with my main focus being the spray, it was time to just crack on and start banking some hours. I think beaming at 100 is going to be a little way off yet, just for now. Yeah, at this point, the RNG feels a bit wild on it. I was going to be following much the same sort of plan as last time, working my way up ever increasing distances, starting up close at 25 meters, practicing crouched and strafing for a chunk of time before moving up by 25 meters and starting over. At the start I was definitely getting to grips with the gun, learning its limits and building confidence. I was soon able to focus on just getting headshots for a while before it was time to move up. I was also playing about finding the differences between being crouched, stood and moving, as well as switching between multiple targets. It's definitely a different style of play, and things like good movement feel like they're bound to come in handy in the future. I continued to spray at 50 meters for a while, really starting to get into it and even playing around with attachments. Definitely feels like RNG is going to play such a big factor in this, but I'm definitely still missing a lot of the shots that I should be making. While the challenge made it so I wasn't going to be using tactical gloves or any of the attachments, I still did want to try them out and see how impactful they were. I won't spend too long on it as I was focused on completely unbuffed MP5, but I can't see many guns leaving the base without at least some sort of attachment being used in the wipes to come. Attachments are definitely game changing now. Now it's less RNG affecting it and more just my inability to control it. Attachments have always been helpful, but now it really does change the gun a lot. While the player's job is to battle against the vertical resistance and the horizontal sway, it seems like the attachments can be used to selectively reduce these effects. With tactical gloves and lasers reducing the weapon sway, the hollow reducing aim cone and the muzzle brake reducing recoil, a fully kitted out MP5 is going to feel significantly steadier and easier to use. That's crazy. That's actually broken. However, I'm one for learning stuff in the hardest way possible and making it easier for myself later if I can. So while I'm weirdly excited to pick up my first gun that has a muzzle brake on it, off came the attachments for the rest of the challenge. I was getting pretty deep into it when I started spending time at 75 meters and up. Definitely starting to feel the wobble at 75, like it's really... You really have to focus in on lining up, which is good to know. Someone picking up the gun won't just be able to instantly beam me hard with an MP5 from 75. I think this is where the skill gap will start to take effect. It honestly felt wild at these ranges, and knowing that the bursting meta was coming, I took this chance to mess around with capping the bullets, starting at 5 and then increasing upwards to try to get to grips with when the recoil becomes a full battle. The first 10 to 15 bullets feel fine, but beyond that is when you can really tell that you're missing shots that should be landing, or the aim just starts jumping wildly off target. I also started to work out where I felt the new learnable parts of the recoil were, and where muscle memory could be built up. The gun has a pretty simple recoil, and pull down is really all you need to do. But the resistance you need to apply to that pull down is what I found myself working on heavily. While different for both standing and crouching, having this steady pace learned is going to help you be more in control, especially at 75 meters and above, where the gun sway really starts to come in. This sway being the second part of the recoil that I feel can be practiced. There's a randomised jumping from left to right that happens within the Aimcone or spread. Up close it's not too noticeable, but on a far away player you can become massively off target in a second. While there's no pattern to be learned here, I felt that I was slowly going through the hours and getting faster and faster with my response times to these jumps. Another 10,000. I could tell that there was an improvement in my ability to recenter the gun and snap back to the middle with every jump. But I won't lie, I was really missing the way you used to be able to see your trail of bullets and correct that trail back on target. Fortunately, while they may feel intense, there is a limit to how far these jumps can go, and if you put time into training that specific reflex and combine it with a perfectly steady pull down, then there's hope for those still looking to turn practice into beams. Endlessly shooting targets is easy, but can be soul destroying, and so mixed into the hours were countless trips to and from aimbots and moving targets. I made use of these to up the difficulty or to practice some parts of the upcoming meta. With the MP5, things like coming to a complete dead stop and crouching feels like it's going to be important. Where before my default was to go into a stood up strafe, in some situations a solid beam at distance will call for a completely different approach now. With that said, I feel like the 50 meter range is really going to be separated by those who stay mobile versus those who become motionless targets. At the right range and being used as you'd expect, the MP5 works really well, and those first 10 bullets are going to be so accurate and deadly. But trying to use the gun at the wrong range, in the wrong stance or while moving, and it gets much harder. At this point in the grind, I felt like I had a good understanding of what the new setup was and what I was trying to achieve. At times though, the randomness really makes it feel like you're getting nowhere, but I pressed on nonetheless. In hindsight, at this stage, I also realised that I should have spent a lot more time at the start, learning the initial pull down by standing up. Learning the pattern this way is almost like using the 8x. It exaggerates the amount that you have to resist the recoil, and means that when you do crouch, it just feels like an easier version. As I continued to loop back through the ranges, I started splitting out what I worked on at these distances. Up close, spending my time practicing strafing, and at range crouch them without moving. The new rule of 20% of the bullets landing on target means a hard limit on what really is worth practicing at what range. My advice is to find your current limit and don't push too far beyond it too early if you want to stay motivated. Here we go, the final part of the run, the comparison shots. Going from up close to 100 meters plus, including some of the strafing comparisons. The update has been a huge change, and all in all I'm okay with them. The MP5 is certainly a contender for the new hardest gun now, but having done this video I do have hope that there's still fun to be had for those of us that enjoy a good grind. I'm glad that as a whole guns are going to be a lot more accessible. Guns shouldn't really feel like a mini game to new players, but I'm also glad that they haven't completely removed the ability to have a skill gap in PvP. I could tell by the end that learning the different aspects of the new recoil was already paying off, and was definitely going to be helping me with my first wipe since the update. I think there's definitely some main areas where I learned the most. Learning to stand and strafe and not to be shocked when switching between crouched and stood, as well as how to better handle the pull down and respond quickly to sway. In general, I was back to feeling a lot more confident with the MP5 in my hands. This is my first 100 hours and certainly not going to be my last, with bursting going to need its own dedicated time and other recoils to spend hours on too. If you have or plan to spend some time grinding recoils, or this has inspired you to do so, let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching my second MP5 video. It's been a busy year and I've made a lot of videos on my Rust adventures ever since, so be sure to check those out. If you're new here, a sub will really help me so much, and if you found this video interesting, like it so others can see it too.